Good afternoon. This is Dottie Lofstrom. I'm the Chair of the Civil Service Commission. Today is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. It's 2:30 PM, and I call this meeting to order.
Thank you, Dottie. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Lofstrom,
Here.
Commissioner Butler,
Present.
Commissioner Rulapon.
Here.
Thank you. And then moving right into public comment, we do not have any at this time unless there's someone in the room that would like to make a statement. Okay, no public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to the next agenda item, which is the meetings. Assuming that everyone has read and reviewed, if you have any questions, please ask them. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll make the motion for the approval of the minutes of July 22, 2026.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
It passes, of course.
We move on to accepting the report of disciplinary action. And Mr. Bonner, are you going to take us through that?
Yes. So we have two orders of suspensions from the sheriff's office for correctional officers. There's no appeal. An order of reduction in salary from San Joaquin General Hospital for a clinical social worker, and there's no appeal. And that's the full report for the disciplinary actions.
Thank you. I accept a motion. I will entertain a motion to accept the disciplinary action report.
I make a motion to accept report for disciplinary action.
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye, and that motion passes as well. Moving on, we are at the Rule 3 appeal hearing.
All right. Chair and members of the commission, the next item on the agenda is a Civil Service Rule 3 Classification Study Appeal Hearing for a classification project 25-004. The project study recommended maintaining one Administrative Assistant 1 position and was presented and approved by your commission on June 10th, 2026. In accordance with the rule, study incumbent may request to appeal the approved recommendations. This appeal pertains to one occupied position with the Registrar of Voters office. The sole issue before you today are either to affirm, modify, or revoke the approved classification action taken in the study. We will first hear from the study appellant, then from the classification analyst. After each party has presented, members of the commission may ask appropriate and relevant questions prior to taking action. Additionally, we have members from the Registrar of Voters leadership should you have department-specific questions. Does the chair have any clarifying questions for me or the council before we get started?
I do not. I appreciate your taking us through the process. Thank you.
We will now hear from the appellant, Ms. Cherie Contreras.
Thank you, committee. I want to present my appeal to you today. Thank you. I'm asking the commission to reconsider the classification of my position because I believe the current allocation does not reflect the character, difficulty, and complexity, judgment, and responsibility of the work assigned to me. My presentation will focus on three things: the written classification standards, the duties documented in the HR study, and the responsibilities I regularly perform. Purpose of the appeal. This appeal centers on two questions. First, do my assigned duties align more closely with the Administrative 2? Second, were the written standards applied consistently during the evaluation? I'm not arguing that every task I perform falls outside of Administrative Assistant 1. My point is that the overall combination of complexity, judgment, and responsibility more closely matches Administrative Assistant 2. Next slide. Governing standard. Civil Service Rule 3 states that positions must be allocated based on the definition, character, difficulty, and responsibility of their assigned duties. So the key questions are, what duties are assigned? How complex are they? What level of responsibility and independent judgment do they require? And how much supervision is involved? These are the standards I'm asking the Commission to apply. Next slide. Administrative Assistant 1 versus Administrative Assistant 2. Administrative Assistant 2 is distinguished by more complex work, greater independent judgment, and less supervision. These are our central factors in this appeal. HR study findings. HR study documents that I monitor legislation, respond to Public Records Act requests, develop procedures, support grant work, perform compliance responsibilities, create public communications, and frequently work with limited direction. These characteristics directly align with the Administrative Assistant 2. Additionally, responsibilities such as developing and running the Certified Election Observer Program, as well as coordinating and running the internship programs with ROV, require analysis, judgment, coordination, and independent operation. Program development. A clear example of the level of responsibility in my position is the Certified Election Observer Program. I researched requirements, built the operational framework, and drafted procedures, coordinated implementation, and now administer the program. This work involved planning, analysis, problem solving, and ongoing accountability, not maintaining an existing process. These responsibilities reflect the type of judgment and program development associated with Administrative Assistant 2. Program administration. My role with the internship programs include developing processes, coordinating with HR and external partners, implementing operations, ensuring compliance, and supervising 11 interns. This requires coordination, communication, and sustained judgment. This is another example of program-level responsibility more closely aligned with Administrative Assistant 2. Independent judgment. Independent judgment is a consistent part of my position. I develop procedures, I prepare board materials, monitor regulatory changes, and identify improvements and implement solutions. These tasks require research, analysis, and decision-making, not simply following established processes. Staff rely on the procedures I develop to perform their work consistently and in compliance with requirements. The original hearing. At the June 10th hearing, additional factors were mentioned such as department size, budget ownership, organizational hierarchy, and typical county usage of the classifications. While these provide context, they are not classification criteria in the written standards. The complexity of developing procedures or administering programs does not change based on department size or structure. This is why I believe the written standards should drive the classification. Comparing standards. The written standards focus on complexity, judgment, and responsibility. The additional factors discussed at the hearing are not included in the Civil Service Rule 3 or the Administrative 2 specification. My request is to evaluate the position using the established criteria and the actual duties performed. Why this matters. Classification standards ensure consistency and objectivity. If factors not found in the written criteria are used, similar work could be classified differently simply because of organizational context. The written standards should be applied consistently to the duties of the position. The record. The duties themselves have not changed. The programs I develop and administer remain complex. The procedures still require analysis. The legislative and regulatory responsibilities are the same. What changed was the explanation used to distinguish my position from Administrative Assistant 2. I'm asking the Commission to evaluate the documented duties using the written standards. Requested action. I respectfully request the Commission evaluate my position using Civil Service Rule 3, the adopted administrative assistant specifications, and the actual assigned duties. The character, difficulty, complexity, and responsibility of my work align more closely with Administrative Assistant 2. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
And now we will hear from the responder.
Good afternoon, Chair Lofstrom, Commissioners, Amy Brimmer, Human Resources. I'll open the county's discussion pertaining to the classification project appeal for project number 25-004. We are asking the commission to uphold your June 10th, 2026 decision to maintain the Administrative Assistant 1 position allocated to Registrar of Voters. The information I will be sharing primarily addresses how the county applies its Administrative Assistant series, and then Sylvia Aparicio will follow on how this application pertains specifically to the study position. Overall, classification is driven by a primary goal to assign positions fairly and equitably across the organization. In listening to my colleagues at the June 10th meeting, they did an excellent job of explaining how we attempt to reach and maintain this goal using objective criteria with regard to the Administrative Assistant series, specifically the distinction between Administrative Assistant 1 and 2. Claims made in the appeal are related to this explanation, and so it is beneficial to again discuss and clarify. Starting with titles. Admittedly, even though we are trained in classification work that titles mean nothing, and it is the class spec content that matters, I personally thought for sure myself that I knew what an administrative assistant does when I came across this series at San Joaquin County. I had seen examples in public and private sector. Unfortunately, the concept I assumed was incorrect. Nowhere in the class specifications or classification report are administrative assistants at San Joaquin County described as performing duties categorized as routine administrative support, which is how the appellant opens their written request for appeal. Of over 7,600 full-time county positions, just 31 are allocated at the Administrative Assistant 2 level. In comparison, there are 148 office assistant specialists, and that classification includes performing the routine work of the administrative functions within a program. Administrative Assistant 1 and 2 are both complex, analytical, and operate at a rather high level. In fact, again, recalling the June 10th meeting, it was explained that this series can be considered more like administrative analyst and is closer to the management analyst series. This is reinforced by the content of the class specifications and its relative position within the county's organization. So we'll go into more detail about the distinction of duties between the two levels in question. But I want to make sure, are we clear about what type and level of work this series in question does and doesn't do? And if there are any questions now or later, we can certainly entertain those.
Why don't you continue, and if we have any questions when you're done, we'll ask.
Certainly. So moving on to how positions are allocated. We refer to the classification title again and the content of the class specifications. The administrative assistant 1 and 2 classifications are slightly yet clearly nuanced and different. These nuances are important. They are important because they are what is used as standards to guide the county in determining which level of position is allocated at within the series. With regard to title, again, we look at the way the levels are represented using the Roman numeral system. This application of titling may infer, and sometimes is applied, that the level 1 is entry, and 2 is what's often referred to as a journey or some other similar descriptors. In that type of application, where an incumbent learns the position and then becomes more proficient, it is more fluid, and the incumbent progresses from one level to the next as proficiency, capability, complexity increase within the body of work. In turn, this is where the increased independence, judgment, and other characteristics are potentially measured and used as standards by a multitude of more subjective or other unspecified examples of work. This is used in some classification series and shows in what the county refers to as a multi-allocated and block budgeted position. So we typically see that in some of our other series, but I'll go forward to how we do that now and apply the administrative assistant 1 and 2 and why. So again, this is not the application used for the administrative assistant 1 and 2. Reasons being, the positions are not multi-allocated. And in order for administrative assistant to be allocated at the 2 level, it has to be evaluated and has been evaluated for certain duties. So those duties are outlined in the administrative assistant 2 class specification by, in short summary, having responsibility for either preparing the department budget and or directing a program. Since supervision of staff is permissive at either level, it is often going hand in hand with directing an operational or administrative program. So those are the 3 primary criteria that are used in the administrative assistant series, especially to evaluate the levels 1 and 2 across the county organization. So those are the particular duties by which the characteristics of complexity, independence, judgment, etc., that are mentioned in the class spec are weighed and measured. We don't necessarily leave that to a case-by-case adjustment because going back to our primary goal of applying fairly and equitably across the county organization. So before I turn this over to Sylvia to demonstrate how these standards were applied to the study position and the claims made by this appeal, again, are there any questions or clarification we can provide regarding allocation factors?
Yes, I do have a question. So in the presentation we were just given, there is an entire program that was developed, the Certified Election Observer Program, developed and implemented. So doesn't that come under the Administrative Assistant 2 typical duties number 1, directs a program?
So directing a program is, so again, well, you're right, here are the nuances. The administrative assistant 1, which of course is our burden to prove, are we working within the class or not within the class? Administrative assistant 2 is somewhere maybe out in the universe somewhere, but not even considered at this point. Typical duty 1 is coordinates a program within the department, oversees the daily operation of the program, may develop programs, participate in grant preparation, and coordinate staff development and training programs. So when we're looking at the currently assigned class to determine if we're working outside of that class, first and foremost, that example that was also provided during the study itself was interpreted to fall within the Administrative Assistant 1 duty statement 1.
Thank you, and I appreciate that additional clarification that of exactly how you are approaching this as far as working within class and without class. That was helpful for me. Before we move to the next presenter, does anyone here have an additional question they want to bring up? We'll have more time later. If you,
No
yeah.
question, but I see that administrative assistant 1 and 2 is being clearly distinguished with their, what are the criteria, what they're looking for. So I see that in the document, which is very clear. If the person is really eligible for the administrative 2, if the opening is there, they can apply. It's free to apply. But there is no need for changing the position name, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last phrase?
No, what I see in the document, understand the administrative 1 and 2, they're clearly distinguished.
Yes.
Very clear specification is there, what they're looking for 1 and 2, and the supervision level and everything is very clear. If the person is working in administrative 1, if they really want to go to 2, they can apply, and if they have any qualification, opening is there, they can free to go for. But you cannot change the position name by appealing, right?
Correct. So if I understand you correctly, you can't take the Administrative Assistant 2 title with,
you
through,
cannot-
through an appeal. Rather, you would take it through the competitive process
Yeah.
for which you are also
Yep,
charged
yep.
to withhold, or uphold. That is correct, and that's why we take these types of studies very seriously. We're very
Understand.
careful about them. We go through multiple steps to understand as well as we possibly can all those aspects
Yep.
of of a position prior to making a recommendation, which is also why they take quite a bit
I
of
agree with
time.
that.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah. But yes, so an Administrative Assistant 2 would be allocated specifically after it had been evaluated typically by the Classification and Compensation Unit and determined to have a need at a level of work and a type of work and responsibility under one of those 3 criteria. But typically the directing a program, which goes along with also supervision of staff, and then preparing the budget in an administrative capacity, not and then that can also include having staff as well. So that's why you see supervision as permissive on both levels, because someone could be responsible for preparing a division's budget, but not, and they can be doing it independently, and that wouldn't necessarily require that they supervise. So
I got
I'm
it.
going down a little bit too much of it, but yeah.
So I see that as even the chair was mentioning, the certified election observer program is something the person, whatever the raise they wrote, I developed and coordinated. Is the concerned person developed it, or is already existing system they're using it?
I didn't quite understand everything. If you don't mind repeating,
No, I
please.
see in addition, the report recognized that I developed and coordinated the certified election observer program. So is something the person developed it, or is already existing system they're using it?
Developed an existing system.
Yeah, it says develop, but exactly they're
Yeah.
bringing develop
They're doing the development and use of
an
it.
enhancement.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I think we could move on to the next presentation.
Thank you. I'll turn over to Sylvia.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Sylvia Aparicio, Class and Comp Analyst, and my analysis is based on both the results of the classification study itself and a careful comparison of the position's assigned duties against the class specifications. Before I begin, I would like to reemphasize 2 important points. First, the Administrative Assistant 1 classification is not a clerical role. And second, by maintaining the classification as an Administrative 1 as an administrative assistant one, excuse me. It should not be interpreted as diminishing the complexity or value of the work performed. This class is analytical in nature, and positions perform complex assignments such as coordinating departmental activities, preparing and analyzing information, assisting with budget and personnel processes, while providing assistance to departmental management. The question before us is not whether the incumbent performs important work. Clearly, they do. Rather, the question is whether the assigned responsibilities are working out of class and meet the criteria that distinguish the administrative assistant to classification. So in reviewing the information gathered during the classification study, it was confirmed that the incumbent is responsible for to research and analyze division policies and procedures, regulatory changes, and other administrative matters to determine their impact and recommend changes as necessary. Also, when it comes to California legislation and regulatory updates, the division receives a standard email update from the California Secretary of State, which the incumbent logs into a division tracking document. Then, based on the needed updates and availability, the division department head determines assignment. The Administrative Assistant 1 job specification also provides the program development and coordination, which is applicable to the Election Observer Program and internship program. However, as a point of clarification for the internship program itself was developed by San Joaquin County Engage Unit, with ROV handling the application of the program itself within the division and coordinating day-to-day internal operations. The Administrative Assistant 1 job specification also identifies that an incumbent may serve as department liaison to the public, which allows for handling Media and Public Records Act requests, coordination to include topic verification, scheduling, and may draft answers for statements for approval by the division head as needed. In contrast, the Administrative Assistant 2 classification is intended for positions with distinct responsibilities within an organization. It is distinguished, again, by directing programs, preparing and administering departmental budgets, directing fiscal, control programs, and exercising greater independent authority. It's through these types of programmatic ownership that an Administrative Assistant 2 typically assumes a more significant supervisory capacity. This position operates under direction, reflecting a higher level of autonomy and accountability, and they are expected to provide leadership over programs, staff, and divisional functions. When we compare these distinguishing characteristics to the duties assigned to this position itself within ROV, these higher level responsibilities are not present. For example, within ROV, the Management Analyst 2 reviews and analyzes the divisional budget. The operational management, such as elections managers and supervisors, direct division programs and provide oversight over staff. Typically, in the absence of these positions is when you would see the allocation of an administrative 2 within a division. Instead, the position provides analytical and administrative support that enables the division administration and operational management to carry out their responsibilities. The preponderance of work is consistent with an Administrative Assistant 2 classification. Ultimately, the classification decisions are based on the duties assigned to the position, not on the value of the employee or the importance of the work being performed. The study position is an administrative classification with significant responsibility, but it remains distinct from the Administrative Assistant 2, which has one or more of the responsibilities discussed earlier: program direction, fiscal ownership, and/or supervision. For these reasons, HR recommends the commission deny the appeal and uphold your decision to maintain the allocated position within ROV as an administrative assistant 1, as the assigned duties do not support reclassification. Thank you, and at this point, if you've of course heard from the appellant, you've heard from the county, so does the commission have any additional questions or comments?
Does anyone have any additional questions? We are also going to hear from representatives from the Registrar of Voters as well. Okay, thank you very much. And if the representatives who wish to make statements would like to come forward now.
Put it up high for me. Sorry, everyone. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Trevor Perry, Management Analyst 2 with the Register of Voters. I want to briefly address something from today's discussion that I believe gets to the heart of the appeal. I do not disagree that an Administrative Assistant 1 can perform analytical work. I don't disagree that both the Administrative 1 and 2 positions can perform complex work. But if that is the case, then we still have to answer the most important question: what objectively separates the 2 classifications? The Administrative 2 specification actually answers that question. It distinguishes the 2 levels based on degree. The Administrative Assistant 1 performs a less difficult and complex range of duties, exercises less independent judgment, and works under closer supervision. So the question is not whether her work is complex or not. The question is whether her work demonstrates the greater complexity, greater independent judgment, and lesser supervision that distinguish level 2 from level 1. HR's own study documents that she works with little direction, exercises independent judgment, develops and coordinates programs, develops procedures, analyzes regulatory changes, addresses compliance issues, and independently resolves operational problems. Yet we continue to hear additional explanations for why that is still somehow level 1. The department is smaller. There are other levels of management. She doesn't own the entire budget. She is not considered the department's primary authority. Respectfully, this is where I believe the distinction has become increasingly subjective. If both levels can be analytical, both levels can perform complex work, and satisfying the written distinction still does not establish level 2, then what objective standard is an employee supposed to meet to distinguish one level from the other? That line cannot move depending on the department size, organizational structure, or an unwritten understanding of how the county typically uses a classification. In fact, the civil service rules provide an objective framework. Rule 3 says positions are allocated according to definition, character, difficulty, and responsibility of their assigned duties. At the previous hearing, however, the rationale expanded beyond those written standards to department size, budget ownership, organizational layering, primary authority, and typical county practice. If those are truly requirements for Administrative Assistant 2, then they should be written into the classification specification so that every employee in every department is evaluated against the same standard. Otherwise, we are asking employees to satisfy criteria they could not know existed because they are not contained in the standards governing their classification. The facts in HR study have not changed. What has changed and expanded is the explanation for why those facts supposedly do not qualify for Administrative Assistant 2. I respectfully ask the Commission to bring this decision back to the objective standards before you. What work is actually being performed? How difficult and responsible is that work? How much independent judgment does it require? And how closely is the position supervised? If those are the standards we apply, I believe the record speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak from the ROV? Does anyone who's already spoken want to come back and respond to anything? Okay, I just saw a movement there and I thought perhaps that's what your movement implied. So, okay, so that leaves it up to us. this is a tough one, I think. I think this is the toughest one that we've faced. We hear good and compelling arguments from both sides. I do think the last speaker just made a really good point about, the administrative assistant 2 is under direction, the administrative assistant 1 is under general supervision. And I myself find that troubling, actually, that that's in there, suggesting the working out of class. But then everything else I go through would suggest the other way for me. So I'm stumbling a little bit. Do either one of you want to, Ms. Butler, you want to share your thoughts?
It is a tough one. Reading the two, there's very, very minimal differences between the two, classification on the job descriptions. So no, it's a very difficult one, and I'm struggling as well, so.
Yeah, most of these kind of jobs is parallelly equal, and the distinguish between this is very difficult, but it has a different layer, like junior level, administrative 1, administrative 2, but it covers his own responsibility. So I'm pretty okay, clear, so I think we can make a motion and
I'm ready to entertain a motion. Do you want to go ahead and make one?
yeah, make a motion for the classification project 25-044, register voter of appeal hearing, deny the appeal and uphold the adoption of classification project 25-004, as presented on June 10, 2026.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And no opposed. So the motion has been made and accepted to deny the appeal and uphold the adoption of the classification project. I wanted to talk to you directly, but I realize I can't. I have to keep my microphone on. I just want to say that through this process, we have come to understand how much your department values the work you do and is willing to go out on a limb for you, and hopefully that is consoling for you. Thank you. With that, we're ready to move into our closed hearing. So we will now adjourn for the Real 20 closed hearing. Not adjourn, I'm so sorry. We will recess for the Real 20 closed hearing.
Dottie, we're going to ask you to give us a few minutes to get the other teams meeting up and people situated.
This is Dottie Lofstrom. This is the Civil Service Commission. We have returned from our closed session. We have nothing to report. We will continue with scheduling the matter at hand. And with that, I believe we have one more opportunity for public comment, or can we move to meeting adjourned?
We can move to meeting adjourned.
Okay, with that, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.